Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our webcast today. My name is Rhea Kelly, and I'm Editor-in-Chief for Campus Technology. I would like to welcome you to today's event entitled Technology Think Tank, How to Enrich Student Experiences and Fuel Self-Service in Higher Education. This webcast is brought to you by Campus Technology and sponsored by BrainSell and Zendesk. Education is rapidly evolving, and colleges and universities need to adapt to today's digital climate and consumer behaviors to meet future needs. But while universities tend to be on the cutting edge of research in many fields, they can be risk-averse when it comes to reconsidering the structure of their own technology stack, a problem that is further compounded by budget cuts. Today, we have a panel of thought leaders and experts in the higher ed space who will share how colleges and universities are leveraging smarter and more efficient technologies and data to enrich student, faculty, and parent experiences. Our speakers today are Melissa Schutter, Executive Director of Operations for Support Services at the University of Louisville, Ali Lipman, Account Executive for BrainSell, and Molly Curtin, Account Executive for Zendesk. So a few housekeeping items. For our format today, we will have about 45 minutes of an open forum discussion, followed by some time for audience Q&A. You can submit questions at any time. Just look to the question field at the left of the slide window, type in your question there, hit submit, and we'll field those questions at the end of the presentation. If you have any technical difficulties during the session, look for the yellow question mark icon below the slide window and click there for technical assistance. If you would like to download a copy of today's presentation, you can find that in the Resource Center below the question field. And finally, within the next day or two, we'll email you a link to the archived version of this session so that you can view it on demand. That will be available for 90 days after today. So now, without further ado, let's get started. So this is kind of a question for all the panelists. Today we're focused on talking about how colleges and universities can leverage help desk technology to enrich student experiences. But before we get started, let's hear where you went to school and what was your mascot. Ali, would you like to go first?
Yes, I went to the University of South Carolina upstate, and our mascot was Sparty the Spartan.
And Melissa, how about you?
Yep, I actually attended the University of Louisville, where I still work today, and we are the Cardinals.
And finally, Molly?
I graduated from Marian University in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and I believe it was the Timberwolves.
I think I have you all beat because my mascot at Pomona College was the mighty sage hen, which I think was kind of like a desert chicken. So, okay, let's dive into the discussion. Molly, I understand BrainSell and Zendesk partner with schools to help modernize their technology stacks. So what do you see as the biggest obstacle in 2022 for higher ed institutions?
I think as we go through just a general shift in every way we communicate with people, starting with, kind of what has happened to us in the past couple of years, how we communicate has changed so much. And I think that definitely has impacted higher education in, do we communicate with our students via chat, via phone call, and how do we make sure that we have that infrastructure in place? And that has been the big struggle, I think, that I have seen as I've helped out different colleges and universities, including University of Louisville.
And Ali, at BrainSell, you have a lot of discussions with universities about improving efficiency and self-service. What have you been hearing in those conversations, and how can technology be leveraged to help?
Yeah, well, I think administrative offices at colleges and universities, they're often left on their own to navigate how they communicate with the students or staff that they service. So I often hear from them that their staff are overworked, that they have repetitive requests and things fall through the cracks. And I think that student expectations have changed so much. Young people expect this consistent and excellent customer service from administrative departments, and they expect to be able to make requests on their own terms. they don't walk down to the registrar's office like I might have when we were on campus. Plus, the way that people are seeking education is different now. Campuses are managing and servicing more technology than ever before. So if you're remote and you have a hardware issue or can't log into Blackboard, that can seriously impact your participation in learning. So I'm seeing and hearing from my customers and prospects on college campuses that they're gearing more towards a support and communication model that looks like the modern customer experience that we're familiar with as consumers. The term omnichannel support, which you might hear a few times today, and it means that a student or staff member could theoretically reach a department on campus via chat, via WhatsApp, Facebook, or email and receive the same experience every time. Or perhaps they're serviced by an AI bot that can manage password resets and answer frequently asked questions before they ever actually get to a human. But having a place for all that centralized communication and the tools that help administrative staff and students get to those answers quickly and efficiently is all part of keeping up with the growing expectations and scaling those teams that service students and faculty on campus.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, I'd love to hear how these things that Molly and Allie have brought up, particularly in terms of the obstacles this year, how do those resonate with your experience?
Yeah, I tell you, when we set up Zendesk, top of mind for us was really a continuity of care and a culture of responsiveness, both of which were supported by Zendesk. In the continuity of care space, it's really facilitated with that transparency of tickets within the team and the ability to workflow and to work when our team is out on well-deserved vacations, right? So just because somebody's out, we don't want that to create a stop. And that transparency of tickets really does help us do that. Also, we're able to manage our responsiveness and able to set service level agreements. So we have a commitment to responding to all tickets within 24 hours/8 hours of work time from the point it was received, at least to say, hey, we've heard you. And so we're able to set up service level agreements in the system and then watch and manage tickets accordingly and make sure we don't create any responsiveness gaps. The other thing that has really been helpful is making sure that we have consistent messaging. When you've got large teams, making sure we're sharing the messages consistently when responding to questions is important. And so we're able to use macros as well as knowledge capture from our knowledge base articles to make sure that our team is consistent in response, which has been really helpful in managing that level of quality.
So I kind of want to time travel back, before bringing in Zendesk. What was the state of operations for you, Melissa?
Yeah, so our shared service center has been up since 2016. We started at the time with a team of 9, and we were managing through service accounts, as I know many do, right? Email service accounts with multiple hands in them, manual moving of things from one folder to another through processes. I personally was afraid to touch it. Like the team had all these rules around it. I'm like, y'all don't want me in there. But we were small and we were able to, we did the best we could. We were manually tabulating our statistics on the types of questions and the number of inquiries we were getting. And, it was just unstructured and an inefficient but necessary way to operate at the time. We also missed calls. Like we weren't recording calls. We didn't have calls weren't creating tickets, more manual tracking. And then in 2017, we launched Zendesk, and we got the structure of a shared environment. It allowed for clear assignments and escalations. We were able to go back because we had calls recorded and do quality checks and work on coaching session with our team. And then the out-of-the-box statistics with Zendesk were really just a huge game changer. I'm a data wonk, and so I believe the numbers tell us a lot about what we do, and the ability to get those numbers quickly without manual tabulation was just extraordinary. We did, when we implemented, we did continue to use our service account email because people were familiar with that. And what we did was we set up our email to automatically go into Zendesk and create a ticket anytime our service account was in the to line. And so we were able to honor our institutional culture, stay with those emails that our faculty are so fond of sending, and then really from behind the scenes able to start managing tickets effectively. We're now, 5 years later, a team of 52. So there is no way we could have scaled as quickly as we have to provide services to the university without a platform like Zendesk.
Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit about what led you to selecting Zendesk? Maybe it's like the key considerations for a platform like that.
Yeah, so when we stood up business operations, brand new organization within the university for shared services, we knew we had a customer service team that needed structure. We needed a platform. We needed a CRM of some sort. So our customer service quality improvement director, Pam Frank, scoured the internet, basically. And she found a webinar that actually BrainSell hosted. And we were looking at a different CRM at the time and just really doing a lot of data gathering. And through that conversation with BrainSell, probably a session much like today, we were introduced to Zendesk. And then from there, we started to look at the integration of talk, the phone, the ability to record calls as well as create tickets from calls. We looked at the costing, and we really looked at that ability to scale. At the time, we were small. We didn't want to have to overinvest in the technology, but we needed something that would scale as we scaled. And so that's the usability, the ability to quickly implement, and then the cost were all considered as factors.
Could you share any examples of how areas where the tool has really helped you?
Oh, yeah. So we started our first year, we only let the customer service team use Zendesk. We wanted them to really have the time and space to develop it out, to get our own institutional cultural best practices in place. I will say I'm a big fan of having the team jump in the water and swim immediately. So we planned a little bit, and then we played a lot to get ourselves up and running. Again, having a small core team to implement. We leverage forms so that we create and capture information that we're able to set tickets that automatically flow to the right groups. We have had situations where other areas outside of our day-to-day activities, we had a data breach, which, you don't wish on anyone. But with that data breach, we were able to serve as a central point of contact so that those in the central office that was affected could really focus on solving the problem. We took the feedback and then gathered it up, packaged it, and were able to hand that off. So being able to set up quickly tags within the system that allow us to adapt quickly to new work. The other thing that was huge, really, was we became the COVID contact center. So thinking about COVID and its impact, I'll do two things. One, we, on the 17th, decided we were all going home. Everybody grabbed 2 monitors and their laptop and their docking station and went home. And on the 18th, we were up live and running, in large part because we were already working together in systems, including Zendesk. And then about 4 months into the pandemic, the feedback that the management team, the central university management team was getting was kind of ad hoc, and we needed a better way, and we were already ready. So within 36 hours of the ask, we had the team upskilled and informed with the right FAQs, and we were able to ask questions and get the team ready. And then we served from that point forward as the COVID response team. So really working with our central offices and to be as responsive and real, not just perceived, but real feedback. And we had recorded calls if we needed to share them at times. And so it really, I was asked how many people we had to hire to do that. And we just reprioritized the work, added some new tracking mechanisms in Zendesk so we could then report early on a daily basis, later on a weekly, and I'm happy to report we had 0 COVID calls last week.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about some of the challenges during the pandemic and remote learning. What kinds of calls are you dealing with? What are the issues that you need to overcome?
So we got lots of calls from students and parents, lots of questions about vaccinations. We had lots of calls about where to get vaccines on campus. And the great thing was because we were central and we had direct lines of communication to our campus health, to our vice presidents that were trying to, really navigate these unclear waters, we were able to increase the university's responsiveness overall. Meanwhile, we're doing our day-to-day business, right? So we we help with timesheets and payroll. We onboard, we never stopped onboarding students, staff, and faculty, and we are the primary point of contact for I-9s. And so we're able to track all of those questions and activities. We do a large number of remote I-9s, particularly as COVID and the pandemic set in. More people working remotely, we're hiring more people across the United States. And so we manage all of those interactions with other institutions to get the I-9s done through Zendesk. So we always know what's in the queue, what's in the pipeline, when the volume of work hits a level where we may need to shift some resources to assist. So it really helps us with resource management, responsiveness to information. We watch any new trends with regards to the types of questions being asked. We use that information to update our knowledge base, which allows us to, again, enhance that knowledge capture. So when we first started in 2017 with Zendesk, we started just with tickets. In 2019, we added the knowledge base, and we just this year have expanded to the enterprise license, which is going to allow us to integrate chat, and then we will, in 2022, launch the Autobot. We've got it in, we're testing right now.
Yeah, well, that was actually leads into my next question about, now that we've time traveled to the past, sort of time traveling to the future, where do you see, yourself in terms of how you're using Zendesk and other technologies in operations?
So in operations, we're definitely doing the Autobot. That was on our 3-year goals, so we're hitting that. We'll launch that probably in the next 60 to 90 days. So I'm really excited about that. We're very clear that they're talking to a bot, but for those who prefer that, they'll be able to, and then we always can launch straight to an agent if needed. We're also having conversations with other operational areas. The ProCard office gets a lot of the same types of questions, so we're talking to them about how who might help them. We're talking to our HR benefits area, another space where oftentimes it's helpful if you can self-service. They get the same types of questions. We just launched this year with a brand for financial aid. That has been huge. So I think everybody in higher ed has a financial aid office. They were managing from multiple shared email folders. And so they've been live about 60 days now. And I talked to the director today just to check in, see how things were going, make sure I didn't overstate anything in this webinar. And she said it's just fantastic. Like, they thought they knew how they wanted to set up, getting in and really using the system. That we've been making some tweaks with them. They're in their own standalone brand. So other agents in business operations don't see what's going on in financial aid, which is the way we need it to be, because they deal with such sensitive information. And so that's gone extraordinarily well. It's a little undaunting. It's a little daunting. The director of financial aid said it's daunting because now she can see everything she needs to address. But the upside is she can see everything that she needs to address. So it's really positive.
Allie, you've been working closely with Melissa and her team, and of course, Zendesk can be used in departments other than operations. So could you tell us about some of those other use cases?
Yeah, definitely. I think Melissa shared a couple of them too, so thank you so much. But Zendesk works anywhere there is a need for centralized communications from multiple channels. So in addition to departments like business operations, financial aid, the University of Louisville also uses Zendesk for its campus-wide Blackboard support and to manage study communications, communications in the Environment Center. But we also have customers using Zendesk in admissions departments, IT offices throughout their college campuses, accounting, dining services, facilities, athletics, registrar, campus centers, student affairs, treasurer departments, and more. So there's really a lot of different use cases across the different business units on campus.
And Molly, is Zendesk mainly appropriate for higher education, or would it be useful for any educational institution that has a service desk?
We certainly have a lot of customers, not only in EDU, but also other education, K through 12, as well as other systems. One of the core functionalities of Zendesk, or one of our core ethos, is really to help you meet people where they're located. And not only that, but we want to help you help out your faculty and students as well through our knowledge base. I know Melissa had kind of brought that up before, but very strong, robust ability to provide people the answers on their own time in their own mechanism is one of the best ways to really drive that level of communication. And absolutely, we do work with anyone who's willing to look at Zendesk.
All right, so I want to kind of look at sort of the forecast for 2022 and beyond. So I'm going to ask all of you what trends you think colleges and universities should be monitoring when it comes to student experience and engagement. Molly, maybe we'll start with you.
I think that we definitely see a change in the way people are communicating, and we certainly talked about this before. But as we look at, people who are of college age, they're less likely to pick up the phone and call. To Allie's point, they're probably way less likely to walk into the office and chat with the Office of Registrars. There's, we're seeing a huge change and shift to social media and chatting and those types of venues of communication. And I think that we'll continue to see that.
And Allie, what do you foresee for the coming year?
Yeah, so hard to just choose one, but I was thinking about how even in the post-COVID world, I think college and universities and K through 12 are really pivoting towards this flipped classroom model, where even in in-person learning, students are expected to engage with technology to participate in class. So while that's great, it makes learning more flexible and accessible. It also means that campuses just across the board are managing more hardware and software assets than ever before. And it's super high stakes if something goes wrong. So colleges and universities need to be able to respond to issues quickly to support students and faculty, but also be able to meet them where they're at, like Molly said. So centralizing your communications and opening up lots of channels to reach your students and faculty is going to be key.
And Melissa, same question for you. And I'm also sort of interested how the student experience and engagement factors into your strategic planning as an institution.
Well, students are center first and foremost, right? So I think, managing more remotely has been, and Zendesk facilitating that you don't have to be in a single space has been very helpful. From a student engagement standpoint, primarily in operations, we're engaged with student employees and being able to make sure we get them onboarded and get them the information they need to start working for the university is paramount. Now that we have financial aid in place, being able to gather feedback. I know another thing, making sure we're hearing the students and what their experience is, and then being able to be tactical around that is really important. The university has three, we want to be a great place to learn, work, and engage. And so really making sure that both that learning platform, the responsiveness to our Blackboard, as well as the financial aid piece and the employment piece are all central.
Great. So I'm going to pause for a moment and remind everyone to submit their questions. We're going to begin the Q&A portion of the session. You can submit a question in the question field to the left of the slide window. You just type it in there, hit submit, and then we'll see it, and we'd love to get all your questions answered. Have a few of my own just from listening to you all talking. So Melissa, I was curious about kind of the structure of your department, the roles, and just kind of how everything works organizationally, like, and how many people we're talking about, and stuff like that. If you're comfortable sharing, I think it would be interesting context.
Yeah, so one of the things when we first stood up our operations support center, is we really wanted to make sure that we had that customer focus. So we have customer service and quality improvement representatives. We have, I think, 5 of them now. I'm going to get my numbers slightly wrong, but about 6 with the director in that column. And then we serve when we originally stood up, we planned to be a process improvement organization where we would redesign processes. We would always ask ourselves, we're 21st century billion-dollar enterprise, how should we be working? And then from that visioning, then actually try to implement decisions. Always people wanted workflow, transparency, and the such. And so we have both HR transactional support as well as financial transactional support. And in the finance area, we do reconciliations for over 3,000 of our speed types or programs. We have, we support travel, ordering, and some Pro Card support. And then we also have another group that focuses specifically on the nuances around sponsored programs and payroll funding changes that can be a little sticky. So we've got a team of experts for that. And then we added last year, or I guess it was 2 years ago, we added a vertical so those are all the implement a decision after it's made. And then we also have one more vertical, the strategy team, which helps all of our administrative heads work on how it is, what information they need in planning for decisions. So they're the pre-decision group. Once the decision's made, it's handed off to the transactional team, and then our customer service team serves both groups and the institution as a whole. And we're at 52 now. We started at 9 and have grown to 52 over 5 years.
Wow. And how did sort of using Zendesk, or how does that impact, the I want to say like the growth of your department, or being able to, assign people to specific areas?
Yeah. Well, I will say that the transparency freaks people out at first because everybody was in their own email and, you shared when you wanted to. So there's a little cultural change with that, with the transparency, but we would not have been able to scale unless we had a platform like Zendesk. So you're able to, when you bring people on, limit their view so they can stay focused and expand it over time. The ability for areas to look at the same ticket or to ask questions. Zendesk has the ability to kind of embed forms on a ticket. So we do a quality assurance check-in. I always challenge the team to find 2 good ones for every bad one that they may find. Hopefully we don't find bad ones, but if they do, we should find 2 good ones. And so all of that's built in, and then we're able to report on that as well. So we can see who's doing quality checks on their own tickets, which managers are quality checking their team, and then what kind of conversations we need to have as a leadership team around those quality checks as well. So again, couldn't scale without it. The ability to check in on ourselves and manage our own quality has been really important. And I think it has shown in the trust the institution has provided in moving more transactions to us and expanding what we're doing. A couple of times you've mentioned how,
you are looking at data from the system to inform things you need to do. Could you talk more about that, like the kind of the things that are important to track for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned before the SLA on how often, how quickly we're getting to tickets. Are we publicly replying? Even if it's just to say, we hear you, we're getting to it, we'll be in touch in the next 72 hours, as long as there's some public reply. The other thing, we look at volume on a regular basis. So we survey our tickets 1 hour after a ticket is solved. A survey goes out, and we simply ask people, was your experience good or was it bad? So, and then they're offered an opportunity to provide a comment. And so every morning, every Monday, we have a huddle for the whole team. And we share what our volume numbers are that week, just to respect that we handle quite a bit. And we look at what's created and what's solved. So in essence, checking in on our backlog, how many tickets, what's building behind us. We look at our satisfaction. So we run I'd say 98 to 99% satisfaction. We did have a run at the beginning of this year, 100% for 12 weeks. That was really exciting. Nobody wanted to get the bad ticket at that point. Like, nobody wanted to bust the streak. So we do look at those satisfactions. Again, we send out a survey 1 hour after something is solved. We have good response rates, and the amount of time people take to write nice things has been just overwhelming. So it's called the Monday Morning Good News. We share all those positive comments out to the full team. And then I share that with any negative comments and what we did to resolve those up to my supervisor, my boss, the COO, Mark Watkins, every Monday, and I call it the Monday Morning Good News. We also look at our year-over-year trends, so we can see from when we implemented in 2017 to where we are today, the growth. And that's important. I know there was this perception by some administration at the University of Louisville that when COVID hit, we were going to have people who didn't have work. Now, that was true for some who maybe worked in travel because travel tanked. And so we repurposed. In some cases, we had to lay off staff. But the number of calls we were getting were increasing. And it was so helpful to be able to say, not have a perception, but actually have data to say, please understand that we're doing more, not less. And so nobody's, so let me just remove that thought that, teams are at home and they're twiddling their thumbs, they're not doing it. We had that trust factor, I think, when everybody first went home, to be assured that people are working and we could see their work taking place in the system.
That's super interesting. Molly, I wonder if you wanted to weigh in on kind of some of the data capabilities or things that can be tracked in the system.
Absolutely. One of the great things about Zendesk is that it is incredibly customizable. From the back end perspective, I know Melissa brought up tagging, she brought up macros, all these great functions within Zendesk that help your team run as seamless as possible. And when it comes to, the data that you collect, all of that is specific to your own instance. So, but not only that, and which I absolutely love about Zendesk, is that, our setup, with BrainSell is very easy. We can get you up and running quickly and have it designed to your needs, which is so unique. It is quite easy to be able to add a tag to something and then report on that functionality. So, to Melissa's point again, if there's something that's kind of changing, you can very easily shift. A lot of the back end of Zendesk is drop and drag. So you have that ability to be as nimble as possible within your system. And then not only that, but show, how quickly you were able to adjust and give the actual results to it. So I'm so excited to hear what Melissa said about being able to shift people into other roles, into business operations. That makes me feel so good as a person who represents a software that I strongly believe in, but it's great to hear the practicality of it as well.
Yeah, Rhea, if you don't mind, I'd love to just piggyback on what Molly said as well. one of the things that I heard from Melissa that I just want to highlight is when they began, they were a team of 9 in Zendesk. So Zendesk is very supportive of small businesses and supportive of small business units in EDU, and is scalable with your department so that it grows with you. And one of the cool things that Zendesk does as a very data-driven company is they benchmark their base to understand what kind of metrics people want to track. So when you're a small team of 9 and you're going from a shared inbox to a sophisticated ticketing solution, you might not be sure of what kind of metrics you should be tracking. So right out of the box, Zendesk provides all of that for you. So they'll start collecting your data immediately and helping you digest it into visuals, metrics, things like response time, customer satisfaction, when your busiest hours of the day are, so that you can start digesting that immediately. And then as your sophistication grows, you can start to come up with custom queries as well, using all of the ticketing data that you are collecting from your different channels. So you can kind of solidify the things that you need to look at and understand where your bottlenecks are, where more training might be necessary, where people are searching your knowledge base for articles that you don't have, and just areas of opportunity. So I just think the data output portion of Zendesk can't be understated. And, I wanted to emphasize that it's scalable as well.
Yeah, excellent points. Another thing I wanted to ask you, Melissa, you had mentioned sort of the culture change of people getting used to the transparency that Zendesk sort of provides in operations. Do you have any advice for kind of getting buy-in from people to be happier about using the tools?
Yeah, I think, that whole, if you find something you need to coach on, finding 2 things that went really well, looking for the good examples, being open that it's about the work, not the people. Another thing, as much as you can create a shared understanding of what that excellence looks like, I think that that's helpful, because you can always draw on. So these are the 5 points for excellence that we have defined, like, did you answer the person's, very simple things. Did you answer the question that was asked? Did you use the first name when you in a greeting? Did you offer additional assistance? Those are the kind of quality checks that we want to make sure. Did you have a public reply before you closed a ticket? There's one way to guarantee a negative response, and that is to close a ticket without a public response. And it's easy to do when you're in the ticket, you've done what you needed to do, and then you solve it, and you're like, oh, they didn't. And you get a negative comment because you didn't tell the end customer what you had done. So those are really helpful. I think another thing in being a big fan of data and understanding not everybody is understanding what the data targets are. So 100% is not always reasonable. Don't ever, well, I always say no one will be flogged with the data. Like, the data is here to help us tell a story. It's to help us get ahead of something before it goes bad. So as much as we can understand the data, then we can start predicting it. And and so Zendesk really does come out of the box with some great things. It does take a little bit. Like, we had to decide what's really important today for us to go forward. And once that stabilizes, we'll pick another metric and start looking at it. So so it's great. And the data, I think, getting people to understand and own their own data, teaching them how to watch their own data so they can feel that ownership, I think can be very positive.
Mm-hmm. I really like that as a best practice. Never flog people with the data.
Right. I had someone cry because she got a negative response. And I'm like, you don't control the other person. Like, let's just talk about what is. And so seeing the team really take ownership has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take some of these audience questions that have come in. First off, Melissa and Ali, how much time does it take to get Zendesk up and running? Melissa, we'll talk about your experience first.
Okay. So like I said, I challenged the team to have it up and running within the 30-day free trial that we got with Zendesk when we stood up in 2017. And Pam might have said, what? So my style is very much jump in the water, swim, let's get a feel for it. So we were up and running in 30 days. Now, we were small and very defined about what we were opening. We were opening tickets for a customer service team. When we just onboarded financial aid, it took about, Pam said it took about 9 to 10 meetings, which we had prescribed kind of what information we needed, what conversations we needed to have with financial aid so that we could get pretty close to right when we open it up, understanding that they would refine their groups, their memberships, what service tags they'd want to cover. And so they're 60 days in and feeling much more comfortable in the space then. So and let me just say too, we manage it ourselves. We're not managing it with IT. So the customer service team, we have 2 folks who are, I guess, our Zendesk specialists, but all of our leadership team can write their own macros. We know, so it's very easy with the right training to be very self-sufficient within our own operation. And it is our web page. And so I didn't want to have to hire a web designer, and I didn't want to have to wait for somebody else to do changes. We needed to be more responsive than that. And so we're able to our website is our knowledge base, and then we control that. We had a little bit of programming we hired out in the very beginning, but it served us well still today.
And Allie, would you say that's typical of kind of a typical rollout?
Yeah, so there's an official answer to this because Zendesk also has a published economic impact study that has been done. And the official answer is that 90% of customers deploy in 6 to 8 weeks, which is wild in the world of software implementations. We do a lot of them here at BrainSell. Zendesk stands up really quickly for us. So to hear Melissa support that when she talks about her own implementation, I think is really powerful. A couple things I just want to highlight is that from a UI perspective, Zendesk has been designed so that somebody without a degree in programming can go in and administer it themselves. There's nothing crazy complicated about Zendesk in the back end. So part of what we do during our implementation is to sort of teach you to fish, where we collaborate on the design and also teach you how to make changes iteratively. Because as your department grows and changes need to be made, you don't need to be reliant on a third party to do those things. The other thing I want to mention is that Zendesk is extremely well documented. So they drink their own champagne over at Zendesk and have just an incredible knowledge base with all sorts of recipes on how to do frequently created triggers, automations, macros, etc. So it's a really easy way to navigate yourself through all of the different challenges that you might come up with. And when you work with a company like BrainSell, you also get the added benefit of having a Zendesk implementation specialist to help you get things stood up, teach you to use the platform, and then BrainSell customer success moving forward. So we maintain a relationship with all of our customers throughout the lifetime of the software, and you have somebody that's proactively involved in making sure that you have the right resources, know where to go to ask questions, and you're never in the dark with the platform when you're working with us.
And also, Allie, how about integration with other tools? How easy is that?
Yeah, so it is. It depends, but integration with Zendesk is, one of those things because it's such a leader in the marketplace. There are, thousands of integrations that are available with Zendesk for free to no cost to low cost. So Zendesk has a very robust marketplace full of applications that help them extend the use case. So if you think about being tech support, for example, and needing to hop into a screen share, most of the top screen share softwares like TeamViewer and Zoom, Teams are all available for integration with Zendesk. Asset management, there's a lot of integrations that are available. There's also a lot of productivity applications that are available in the marketplace. So that's how Zendesk usually extends the platform. They also have this incredible framework for writing integrations called Sunshine, which helps them extend the use of the platform as well. So if you have, I would say, a legacy ERP system that has all of your order information, your manufacturing company, and you have customers that write in and you need to be able to go through and see their order information, we are using Sunshine to build out applications for people that help address those custom use cases. So there's a lot of application for it for both EDU and beyond. And we use that kind of extendability of the platform, whether it's through Sunshine or whether it's through the application marketplace to manage those integrations. And plus, Zendesk has an open and flexible API. So we're developing on it all the time, helping to meet different use cases. And I would say it's probably one of the most easily integratable software products out there in the marketplace.
Great. And here's a question for Molly. It says, we use multiple channels to communicate with students. So what channels does Zendesk provide?
Well, we are a completely omni-channel environment, which means that you can have communication with your students and faculty, regardless of where they are. All of that information comes into Zendesk. So, Allie talked a little bit about the Teams integration or the Slack integration. So if you're using those collaboration tools internally, all of that information comes into Zendesk ticketing system. So your folks that work on your team are only working out of Zendesk. And that's the same with our omni-channel. So whether it's phone calls, emails, chats, or social messaging, all of that information goes into Zendesk, and there's no need for your team to toggle in between systems. In fact, I have worked with a few EDUs that really love the fact that we integrate with, it's not really an integration, but we have out-of-the-box communication channel with WhatsApp, because a lot of their students who are international utilize WhatsApp to communicate. Because it's available, it's usually low to no cost, and it's something that we might not use in the United States, but because of the fact that its usage outside of the United States is huge, it's especially huge with international students, and a lot of our EDU customers absolutely love the fact that we can connect them with our international students using WhatsApp.
Interesting. So I'm just going to give kind of a last call for audience questions, and then I'll ask one last question from me. I want to go back to some best practices. So Melissa, we talked about not flogging people with data, and also I love your Monday morning good news related practice. Are there any other best practices that come to mind that you would advise other institutions to that are a good idea?
Yeah, I think as it's going to be defined by the data that you look at. So we know we have a group that supports reconciliation. So they get invoices and other support documents. And we were able to remove them from our SLAs, right? So some things don't need a response in 24 hours. Some things we don't respond to. And so, really understanding the nature of the work and making sure that your data is reflective of what it needs to be. The other thing is, so our HR team, and so this kind of speaks to the same thing, our HR team does recruitments. So the ticket's open for a long time from the point of posting to the point of closure. And there are lots of steps along the way. And so that team gets anxious about how long their tickets are open, because compared to our support team, which has a ticket open about 15 minutes because they're opening, answering, and closing, or solving, and so we had to have a lot of conversation about the fact that we're not measuring each group kind of has its own set of metrics. It's not a one answer for everyone. So I think spending time to understand the data, getting people comfortable with the data, and then figuring out what those targets, what is the next aspiration, is really helpful. The ability to record the calls has been huge. We had one call early on. Somebody was just, I think they're just not a happy person, but they're not going to treat my staff negatively, right? So we had agreed escalations about what would happen if we got kind of a hot personality. And so that came to me. Unfortunately, that person retired but I had a call that I could share with that person's supervisor to say, this is not the way we're going to treat each other. So this is not, and so just need you to deal with your side of the thing. And if this person calls again, my team is instructed not to tolerate any negative behaviors. The ability to, during COVID particularly, to share calls, there was a particularly impassioned parent, and I was able to pull down that call and share it with the COVID planning team to make sure, as an example, to be able to use those examples to say, this is the impact, this is the fear that this call was, it had a lot. I mean, there's a parent in Maryland whose son was at the University of Louisville and who was just wildly concerned about their son's health and ability to get his education at the same time. And so being able to pull that information and share it, not from Melissa Shooter, but from that parent to the group was really helpful. I think, another best practice is just to make sure you're looking at the data. So we have monthly stat reviews where we look at the volumes, the satisfaction. We look at the rate of reopen. So did we think we had something solved and then it comes back? That one's tricky because a lot of people want to say thank you and that reopens the ticket. So, understanding those kind of dynamics, I think is really, really the best practice. And I'll always say, always find two good things for every one negative thing. Don't let the negative overhalo. We do a lot of good work. And we're probably harder on ourselves than we need to be. So try to keep people focused on the positive.
I love that's all great advice. Molly, does anything pop into your head as a best practice for other institutions?
I think just understanding how our environment's changing, that we all have massive computers in our pockets, and to ensure that we're mobily optimized and being able to reach out and send messages, make sure people I know I hit this communication piece a billion times already. I don't want to repeat myself, but I'm going to, unfortunately, be able to, have that information at people's fingertips is so powerful and certainly can change the way we operate.
And Allie, how about you?
Yeah, I think, I want to just scalability and staying nimble. And, I think it's really important when you think about digital transformation, not to think about where you're at today or which processes, that may or may not be working for you. You just want to automate. We call that paving cow paths here. You just make the cow go around in a circle a little bit faster on the cow path. But where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 10 years, and how your department might look in 5 or 10 years. And adopting tools alongside whatever that vision is will help you grow your team and scale the team in turn with that growth. And I think that's what's really impactful about adopting a tool like that, besides the student experience that you're providing or the faculty experience that you're providing, is also, the tools to retain staff and to help them be more effective and focus on high value work and not necessarily the mundane or the monotonous tasks that don't help us improve that experience.
Great. So now before we close, I'd like to hand it back to Allie for a brief overview of what BrainSell has to offer.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about BrainSell. So BrainSell is a 30-year-old growth enablement consultancy. So what does that mean, growth enablement? It means that we help organizations, businesses, schools, educational institutions digitally transform to better serve students, faculty, and staff with scale, with tools, kind of all the stuff that I was just talking about. We do this in a number of ways, and we focus on a number of different business units around an educational institution. So we've got a couple things highlighted here. Blueprint digital transformation. So what this means is digital strategy, backing up, looking at people and process before technology, benchmarking, and figuring out what the digital roadmap will be to move forward. Second is leveraging data as an asset. So how are we looking at all of that data, how are we modeling it, making it speak the same language, understanding it, looking at it for a forward look at what's in the pipeline, what we have forecasted, and also what is in the rear view and what we can learn from, and using our data too as a coaching mechanism to drive outcomes. So what is our integration strategy? Where does our data live? And then how do we model and digest it? I would say it's a good way to put that. And then modernizing your technology stack. So I think you said it right at the beginning, Rhea. It's a lot of institutions have, as their student body is growing, as the world is changing, are kind of constricted by old technology stacks and disparate data. So we come in and take a look at what that future looks like, what the roadmap looks like, and help make recommendations around which tools will support the mission of the university, the mission of your department. So some of the services around digital transformation that we provide are enterprise level systems architecture, looking at artificial intelligence, which can be applied in a number of ways throughout the campus, robotics process automation, virtual assistants, et cetera. And Zendesk is an important part of our strategic mission here at BrainSell. It's also an important part of how we enable growth for our schools and universities. It is part of our growth enablement ethos because it is a tool that helps organizations scale and centralize communication.
All right, thanks so much for that. So to close out the webcast, I'd like to thank our panel for some great conversation and information and advice. Also thank our sponsors, BrainSell and Zendesk, for making today's event possible. I'd also like to remind you that in the next day or two, you'll get an email so you can revisit the recording of the session. You can review it, share it with a colleague, and also you'll be able to download the slide deck that was part of the presentation as well. Thank you very much for attending, and this concludes today's webcast.
Thanks, Al.